Raw vlog recorded in front of a live beverage. It's raw and unedited. Some people don't get it because I just talk it. Sticks in that craw, but you get it. You get the raw vlog. Raw vlog. Hello. Welcome to Raw Vlog number 48. As so stated, Raw Vlogs are recorded in front of a live beverage and delivered to you raw and unedited. In this Raw Vlog, we're going to be talking about emotions and how emotions can be payoff, how they can be liability. It's not going to be touchy-feely. We're just going to be unpacking some things, talking about some of my best rides and things like that. We'll get into some storytelling, I think, maybe. This is the Air Horn channel. The Air Horn channel is a companion channel to my main mountain biking channel, which is the MTB ALAN channel. On this channel, we have these raw vlogs, as well as the Air Horn podcast interviews. Raw vlogs and Air Horn podcast interviews are also available as podcasts. If you're not already subscribed, do hit that subscribe button. You'll know if you're not subscribed if the little subscribe button is red. So check that out. Hit it. Let's try to get this thing up to 1,000 subscribers, because once we get to 1,000 subscribers, I have more capabilities open to me on the YouTube platform. What else am I supposed to say at this point? Okay. Well, we'll just jump into it. Channel news. I am having a grow out of my my COVID cut. It's looking kind of interesting. Hopefully it doesn't distract you too much, but it's going to be with us for this whole episode. In other news, I've mentioned this before, but we hit 5,000 subscribers a while ago, and I'm trying to put together an Ask Me Anything. I'm trying to schedule it. But what I need from you is questions. So hit me in the comments with anything you'd like to ask me, and I'll keep putting those together. I have a Word document or a Google Doc. I'm putting them all together in that, and I'll be going through them in the Ask Me Anything. It'll probably be on this channel. But you can ask me about this, whatever, personal stuff, mountain biking stuff, whatever you think you'd like to hear from me about. In final piece of news, this week's video will likely be a day out on the trails with Henry and Tony at Santiago Oaks. It's kind of the same loop that I did recently with Katie, but a little bit different. But yeah, anyway, that's it. Stoke of the week. I don't have chords yet for Stoke of the week, but I have two this week. One of them is that I recently did an experiment to see if I could get in a ride on a weekday after work in Orange County. So I live in the Inland Empire, which is about 45 minutes to an hour, depending on traffic, to Santiago Oaks, which is in Orange County. It's kind of near Irvine. In any case, did it the other day, and it worked out pretty well. I got home not too late. Normally I edit in the evening, so it might cut into that a little bit, which is why actually I'm not quite sure what our episode is going to be like this week. But that being said, I'm stoked on the fact that I can get those done. I was trying to do that last summer. I just never really got around to it. The other stoke of the week is generally, I'm stoked on watching a couple of newer riders progressing, those being Katie and Henry. I rode with Henry once, and we were riding with him on trails that he had never ridden before. And it was just cool to watch him ride those features and come through that. It just gets me stoked. it gets me stoked watching anybody progress, but when somebody is like relatively new, I just get that much more stoked. It's like the newer they are, the more stoked I am on them. It helps, I don't know, it just helps me kind of remember what it was like to hit those features. And it takes me back to when mountain biking was brand new to me, and it makes it new for me again. And I appreciate that. So new riders, I feel like, do me more stuff, bring more value to me than I think I bring to any new riders. Yeah, that's cool. So that's my stoke of the week. So yeah, we're going to talk about emotions. We're going to talk about, really what we're going to talk about is why I love mountain biking so much. And I know this is just a theme, I keep talking about it, but a couple of things happened recently that made me think about the role of emotions in mountain biking, the role of emotions on the trail, whether we're talking about the positive aspects of that as well as the aspects of emotions being liabilities on the trail. So before we go any further, I'm going to tell you that I like to think of emotions in a very simple and straightforward way. I don't like to get into all the like super like fiddly psychological definitions of feelings. I think there are 4 emotions. There's anger, fear, sadness, and happiness, right? And you can describe what you're feeling with any combination of those. I mean, I'm sure there's moments where we might feel all 4 of those. The other thing I want to say about my approach to emotions is I don't think of them as either positive or negative. I look at them as ways of sensing what's going on internally. I have these other senses for what's going on externally. They if I think of my internals as its own world, that's my way of finding my way around my internal world. And obviously they can feed on each other and all those kind of things. But and last thing I'll say is I feel we do have some level of not control over emotions, but we have the capability of controlling how we respond to them and how we view them. So that being said, how does this apply to the trail? So obviously mountain biking has huge emotional payoffs. I know that there's certain trails that when I get to the bottom of them, I am just laughing uncontrollably, and I don't know why, but I'm just feeling a huge amount of happiness, so much happiness I can't even think. And or maybe it's even the other way around. I'm experiencing happiness because I can't even think. We might get some cat interruptions at some point. So that's one aspect of, or that's one role that emotions play in a day on the trail. The other role that they can play is they can be liabilities to us on the trail. And one example I can think of is Katie and I were talking about this recently, and it reminded me of how I got, what side is it on? How I got this scar on my face. I had a crash. I talked about this in a previous episode of where I basically just like used my face as a plow in the ground, like early on in my first go at mountain biking. I don't know if I talked about this then. Doesn't matter. Come here, cat. She hears me talking. She wants to be part of the conversation. But before I dropped in on that trail, I had been at the top of the trail with a buddy. We were getting ready to drop in, and one of his buddies showed up. And before I knew it, they were in like a 10-minute long conversation about, I don't know, whatever. They got into some like conversation, and I was getting increasingly frustrated because I was ready to drop in, and we had got interrupted from dropping in, and I just wanted to ride, like I've said this before, I think in my being annoyed video or episode, that like I don't like too much talk on the trail. I don't mind chatting, but when we're on the trail, I like to ride. That's what I'm focused on. So that's what was going on. And I dropped into that trail just angry, and Yeah, and I just had such a level of anger dropping into that trail that I wasn't paying attention, and I was just kind of blinded by it. And the next thing I knew, I was on the ground bleeding and ended up in the ER. So that's how it can be a liability. I think also what we're concentrating on, if we're like concentrating on wanting to feel, usually we're trying to feel happiness. If we're concentrated on feeling happiness, that can often actually get in the way of feeling happiness. One example of that is being on the trail and you're trying to feel happy and you have somebody maybe get in front of you who's slower than you, so you can't hit it how you like to hit it, and then you start getting angry about that, which is funny because like you're getting angry, I'm just kind of talking about myself. I will be getting angry about not feeling happy, which is funny because that just if I'm wanting to feel one emotion and then I start feeling another emotion, it takes me further away from that. So I think what I'm that being said, like there are these moments where I actually have this weird kind of, maybe it's not weird, I have this combination between anger and happiness sometimes on the trail, especially during like a gnarly rock section, where a gnarly rock garden where I'm like getting into it, I'm driving into it, and I'm just and I'm like it's kind of like it's like metal, it's like rock, it's like that, and we will use the term aggression for that, but if I were to tie emotions to it, those are the two I would put to that: happy, anger. Crew, do I have hair? Like cat hairs all over the place? Sorry, I know it's raw, but I still like it to be at least somewhat like visually pleasing. So I've totally lost my train of thought. So memorable days though on the trail. When you have those memorable days, reflect on that, and I'll bet you will find that the most memorable days have a whole mix of emotions, or a whole range. All of the emotions can happen on the trail, and I think that really speaks to how it speaks to being open and flexible and mobile with your emotions, and being in a place where you just feel whatever you feel and you observe that and you take it and you don't try to change it or do anything with it. You're just like, you just observe it and just be it and let it be its own thing. So let's say I'm in another situation where I'm at the drop-in and something happens, whether it's hikers on the trails or somebody who needs to finish their story and it's obstructing me from getting on the trail, and I might get angry, and that's okay. I would just be angry for that moment and then not worry about trying to change that, and then just ride and be conscious of that. And even if I take that anger onto the trail, that's fine, as long as I'm conscious of it and know not to let it over have too much of an effect on how I'm going to ride, maybe even use it to some degree. So I think that's kind of what I'm getting at there, is like just being aware of it. And I know when we get even to the trailhead, we've already got things going on and we can take that onto the trail. I personally try to shed as much of my emotional baggage when I get onto the trail as much as possible, because I just want to let that day be its day. I've been on the trail with people who will be going on about something that pissed them off at work while we're stopping for a while, and it can turn into a whole thing. And while I don't think that's good or bad, I personally don't like it. I'd rather just the trail be the trail and just come into it relatively neutral, and that just it allows me to reset. It's kind of my place for emotional recharge, and it also allows me to get that happiness payoff after a ride. I think the thing I really wanted to get to today, and really quick, I'm kind of all over the place right now because I just got back from my OT appointment to work on my wrist, and me and my occupational therapist Erica, we were talking about this, and we had such a good conversation. And I'm trying to bring as much of that conversation into this as possible because we just like unpacked so many cool things. But going back to that idea of the emotional range and how our most memorable days on the trail usually have that range. One of those days is the day where I got to ride with some of the people from Santa Cruz Bicycles, and some people from the Path Bike Shop up at Snow Summit. That day, I don't think I really experienced any anger that day, but I definitely experienced a lot of happiness. I had a lot of fear because those cats they ride a couple of levels above my abilities, and I was on the edge of my abilities to I didn't ever really keep up with them, but at least kind of be, at the bottom of the trail, at least, no more than a minute after they got down there. Yeah, and then I would even say there was some level of sadness at the end of the day where, the day had come to an end, and I knew I was probably not going to be able to ride with a crew like that again for a long time. So that was even there, a little bit of sadness. And the reason I was thinking about that day recently was that somebody recently commented on that video, and it got me like watching that video again, and I found myself just feeling such happiness watching the video, and then such sadness too, because we don't really know when Snow Summit's going to be opening up again, and whether or not it will even get to ride those trails this year. So what's interesting though for me is that same time that I was feeling the sadness, feeling sadness about not knowing whether or not I was going to be able to get to ride those trails this year just sweetened the happiness from that day. I'm just remembering that day that much more. It's funny how that works. The thing I really wanted to get to, one other thing I was going to say about that is I like to think about emotions on the trail as like notes. So if those days when you just have like a day when it's just like one note and you have one emotion from that day, might not be that memorable, but if you have multiple notes playing chords, playing melodies, and you're open to them, they all just kind of work together, like I was just talking about, to be able to feel happiness and sadness at the same time and kind of enjoy it. Am I getting too poetic, too philosophical? Whatever. That's what you're here for, right? Now here's what I really want to get to. Where are we at? Okay, perfect. We're like, I don't know where we're at time-wise. Oh, geez, we're almost at 20 minutes. So let me get to like what I really want to talk about here, which is what I find interesting about mountain biking and emotions and psychology is that for me, it has this way of shutting all that down. When I'm deep in that flow state, when I'm what Joseph Campbell calls bliss, when I am in that moment where I lose track of time is very much more flexible in those moments, when all I'm thinking about is that moment and what's going on within that moment, making that next turn, going through that rock garden, even just like that one rock. There's like certain rock gardens where I know I need to hit that one rock with my front tire. When I'm in that state, it's like a wordless state. I have no words to describe. That's why I'm like stumbling about it. I can't really connect any particular emotion or any particular thought within those moments. And I think when that happens, it allows us to reset and makes us more aware of what's going on. It has the potential to make us more aware of what's going on in us and reveal things to us. And I really appreciate that. And it doesn't even necessarily happen at that much of a conscious level, but going into those spaces where we're so taken up with the physical activity that we're not thinking in words, we're not thinking in emotions, and we're essentially not. I think we're still thinking. There's a part of us that's thinking, if we can even use that word. I think it comes down to a moment of like pure experience, unfiltered experience, just raw connection to being alive and being human in a moment, in a space, doing. I'm no longer thinking about how much suspension I have or anything. I'm not even that aware of the bike. Everything is just kind of one thing. Those moments are the moments that I don't consciously think about. I'm not trying to get there. I just kind of have to allow those things to happen. But those are the moments that I kind of come away with that I can't get any other way. I can't write my way into it. I can't think my way into it. I can't edit my way into it. I have to get on the bike and I have to put myself in those situations, and then maybe it'll happen. And then that's, I think, coming back from that, like that emotionless thought, like thinking-less state allows me to experience emotions and more clearly and think more clearly. It's funny, we never talk about feeling clearly, and I guess that's kind of what I'm talking about. That's funny. It took me this whole 22 minutes to get to it, but that idea of thinking clearly, I think mountain biking helps me feel clearly. Wow, that's kind of funny that we got to that. Wow, I'm glad you were here. I'm glad you were here to get there with me. Yeah, I'm just gonna stop right there because that's pretty decent. That's a pretty good place to stop. And I always forget to say this. I should have said this at the beginning, but I'm hoping you were thinking about some of your stories, some of your experiences like this. Do you get to those moments of like, what people call flow state, where you're not thinking, do you get to those? I'd like to hear about those. And what are your thoughts about this? Am I oversimplifying emotions? Maybe. I don't know. It's been working for me for the last 20-something years. But yeah, that's pretty cool. I hope you dug this. Hit that like button. Check to see if you're subscribed. Hit the subscribe button. I'll show up in your feed and you'll be supporting the channel. Yeah. Kat, you have anything else to say? No, she's good. I still don't have an outro song, but yeah, other than the one I did last time, but we'll think of something if I even remember. I didn't think about it this whole week until just now. So yeah, raw vlog number 48. Hope you dug it. See you next week.